Hello, my name's Joseph Smith. Call me Joe, please. Welcome to the third installment of North Central Cinema. Speaking of three, they say famous people die in threes, and we've seen that in the last several weeks here. We lost three giants, John Madden, Betty White, and Sidney Poitier. And then we lost three celebrities not quite as substantial as those three, but still well known, and that would be Peter Bogdanovich, Bob Saget, and Ronnie Spector of the Ronettes. Now, of those six, in the world of cinema, we're concerned with Sidney Poitier and Peter Bogdanovich, who incidentally died on the same day. So I'm going to do a tribute to Poitier, and then next time we'll do a tribute to Bogdanovich, who's perhaps a bit lesser known. Almost everyone knows Sidney Poitier, an actor. I think it's accurate to say that as an actor, his legacy was pretty much unmatched. He was the first black man to kiss a white woman on screen in 1958's The Defiant Ones. He was the first black man to be nominated for Best Actor, also in The Defiant Ones, and the first man to win for 1963's Lilies of the Field. In case you're wondering how significant that is, it was nearly 40 years before another man, a black man, won Best Actor. That would be Denzel Washington for Training Day in 2001, I think. In 1967's In the Heat of the Night, Poitier's character gets slapped in the face by a white man and promptly returns the favor. One scholar called that the slap heard round the world, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But Poitier's career got off to a bit of an unlikely start. He was from the Bahamas, yet he was granted U.S. citizenship because he was born, well, his parents, he had working class parents and they were in Miami selling produce, and he was born 3 months early in 1927. Now, preemies were not nearly so common back then and had much harder time surviving. So Poitier's mother actually went to a fortune teller who told her not to worry, that he would walk with kings. And that's a pretty good description for the man. And yet, again, off to a rocky start, he failed his first audition with the American Negro Theater in New York City, partly because he had trouble reading, but also because he had a very heavy Bahamian accent. He was working as a dishwasher at the time, and an elderly Jewish waiter, who was a co-worker of his, volunteered to work with him daily. He had Poitier read the newspaper out loud. And after a couple of months, Poitier went back and passed his audition, and the rest, as they say, is history. He was cast in the first Broadway production of the very significant African-American play Raisin in the Sun, and after that followed a series of just one groundbreaking film after another. Cry the Beloved Country, The Blackboard Jungle, Porgy and Bess, A Patch of Blue. Poitier's woodshed year, I should say watershed year, was in 1967, when he had three colossal hits, which most people still remember very fondly. First came To Sir with Love, in which he played a tough black teacher in a tough British school. Then In the Heat of the Night, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. And then Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, in which he starred as half of an interracial couple. That at a time when a mere 6 months before the film's release, interracial marriage had still been illegal in 17 states. Following 1967, he became the #1 box office draw in America, surpassing John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Julie Andrews, Elizabeth Taylor, and many others. Now, those three films, To Sir with Love, In the Heat of the Night, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, along with Lilies of the Field, are the ones that folks remember. I would like to make a special plug for In the Heat of the Night, which is on my top 25 all-time movies. It is a virtually perfect film. Not only does it have a sizzling look at racism, but it's got a great cast. In addition to Poitier, it stars the legendary Rod Steiger, who won Best Actor for that film, Warren Oates, the consummate supporting actor, and Scott Wilson. If you're a Walking Dead fan, you'll recognize Scott Wilson. He only has a couple scenes, a very early film of his. It's beautifully photographed. It has music by Quincy Jones and Ray Charles, and it's got a dandy murder mystery plot in which Poitier plays a Philadelphia detective who sort of wanders into this redneck town in Mississippi and helps them solve a murder, even though pretty much everyone in the town is out to get him. And I'd also like to make a plug for the Defiant Ones, which I mentioned twice. That's in 1958. That was, to some degree, Poitier's breakout role. It's got a great plot. He stars with Tony Curtis. They're convicts who get into a prison truck crash and they escape, but they are handcuffed together. Curtis is a vicious redneck. Poitier's character doesn't take nonsense from anybody, and they just go on the run. It's got a good cast. It's got a beautiful photography, and it scored a whopping 9 Oscar nominations. It is one of the very few films that was nominated for Best Actor for both of its leads. 2 Best Actor nominations for both Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier. In 2013, TV's Leslie Stahl interviewed Poitier, and she observed this. I'm going to read this quote from her. His typical character was dignified, proud, and ethical, upright, well-educated, and often stronger than the white people around him. The actor took some heat for playing these sort of characters who were larger than life or in some ways too good to be true. But he was trying to break the stereotype of the black character in films and to set a role model for the many black performers who followed in his wake. To give you an example of his crusade, and in the heat of the night, that slap scene that I mentioned, Poitier knew that would be a tough sell in certain places. And he had it written into his contract before they started filming that not only would he slap the white character back, but they never could excise or omit that scene from any version of the film, no matter where it was shown. So yeah, groundbreaking. Later in life, Poitier went on to direct. He directed a trio of lesser-known but very funny comedies in which he starred with Bill Cosby. He served on the Walt Disney Board. He was Bahamian ambassador to Japan. He played both Thurgood Marshall and Nelson Mandela in TV movies, and he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. When he passed, Vanity Fair magazine called him the Martin Luther King of the movies. Hollywood Reporter said this, again, this is a quote, I'm going to read it to you. Poitier was the first actor to star in mainstream Hollywood movies that depicted a black man in a non-stereotypical fashion. His influence, especially during the 50s and 60s, as a role model and image maker, was immeasurable. Now, as a final factoid here, those of you who love To Sir with Love, you might like to know that they did make a sequel to that film. It was made in 1996. It's called To Sir with Love Part 2. Same character, Poitier's in it. Incidentally, it was directed by Peter Bogdanovich, one of the other giants we lost in the last few weeks. Bogdanovich was a somewhat well-known director and screenwriter, and we'll be talking about him on the next edition of North Central Cinema. So in the meantime, until we get back to talk about Bogdanovich, I hope you'll queue up one of these Sidney Poitier movies and have fun out there in movie land.
At UPMC, we're pioneering new ways to treat cancer, and we're working to prevent it. We're advancing new technology to look more closely at disease and helping you breathe easier. We perform the world's first heart-liver transplant, and we're experts at keeping your heart beating strong. We're a global team of more than 90,000, advancing care everywhere and delivering it closer to you. UPMC, life-changing medicine.